Alright guys, we're out at the dog scrapyard. And on this side that they sell. But beyond that pile, it's a pick and pull for several acres. In here is where they crush scrap metal and iron and, you know, whatever, all kinds of things. This is the truck that I got the transmission out of. And it was sitting on that rack. That's where they pull the fluids out and all that kind of thing. But they put it up there so that I could pull the tranny out. My son and I could pull the transmission out. And I got some of the bolts loose from the bottom, but what wound up happening was he agreed, you know, I'll just run up there and pull it off with the loader. The interesting thing is, as soon as he lifted it up, the tires cleared. He was tilted relatively level. The whole truck just slid off and fell behind the rack. Most interesting thing. So he had to get up on under the frame, under this side frame rail. It was late. It was tilted and behind the rack. He picked it up, grabbed it inside the C channel of the frame, picked it up, lifted it up, pulled it over, set it down. Then he stuck his bucket, his attachment, you know, the rails on the back side of the forks, on the top of this wheel, and flopped it back down. So for me, it doesn't matter. I'm just taking the wiring and stuff, and looks like the engine's still sitting in there. But holy cow, that was a pretty dramatic event. Wish I would have videoed it, but I got out of the truck to guide him for it, and you know, it all broke loose, and my phone was in the car at the time. So more later. Well, I got it. I got the computer, pulled the fuel rails, the throttle body, all the sensors except for the wire for the temp sensor, which is right in here. It doesn't really matter, but he just pulled out, so I'll have to get a temp sensor, a new one for mock-up, but it's really not that big of a deal. All of the sensors I disconnected from the fuse box. I'm not going to take that fuse box, it's too heavy, so I'll have to pin out for where my relays, and you know, from this point the relays to the fuel pump and all that stuff I'll have to do. But it looks like this, and the nice thing about these older ones is there's the harness, there's the disti, the computer, you know, the other hardware and sensors. I did grab the pickup off the flywheel, which winds up being the flex plate. I'll have to come up with a solution for engine speed, but I'm not too worried about that. Anyway, that's everything. In this case, you know, you can see I grabbed the fuel rails, didn't even unplug them, along with the injectors. It's not that I'm keeping the injectors, it's that I have to use that for the design. Of course, I can't keep the fuel rails because the spacing is different on a Hemi than it is on a Magnum. But that being said, that's where we're at today, and at this point we can shut her down, get back to the house. So I suppose some of you guys out there might think, hey, well, why the hell would you go to a pick and pull, grab a harness and all that shit when you're going to replace you know, potentially replace the harness, right? And replace all the sensors and all that stuff anyway. Well, I left there paying $50 for it. Now, number one, the distributor is, they make an extended rod kit for that electronic distributor. The coil coming with the distributor, whether the coil's good or bad, I don't know. But the likelihood of a 2000 to me means the coil's potentially reusable. The disti is certainly reusable. You can put a module in it. Well, those two things alone are worth what, 30, 40, 50 bucks. I'm not going to use the fuel rails. The harness gives me all the connectors and the appropriate pinouts. So I'd say the education and in terms of what to get for connectors, the time it takes to look all that stuff up and get all that stuff found out is worth it. If I can go with an OEM fuel injector and requiring the OEM type connectors and all that, I'm doing it. I'm doing it because the reliability is there. So that whole setup with the ECM or PCU in Chrysler terminology and Disti, all the stuff that I showed you, they sold to me for $50. I'm money ahead in this deal, and even if I consider myself as being paid something, $1 an hour, it took me about an hour to pull all that out of there, and the time it's going to save me on looking for the components and the connectors, and even if I am going to pull a new harness, to me is well worth it, because I can get miles ahead in making the brackets, locating the components and all that kind of thing on the engine, on the Hemi. So there's my logic on that. Whether it makes sense to you or not, the thing is it does to me. So have a good one.